Hey, this is Ernie Stone, and I'm here to talk about the greatest sport in the world, and that's college football. Now, this is going to be my top 10 teams going into the 2008 season. Hopefully you disagree, and that's what I love about sports, so let's get started. My number one team are the Georgia Bulldogs, and the Georgia Bulldogs are by far the best team in the country going into this year. They started off early in the season with 2 losses last year, and the second half of the year, they were pretty much the best team, beating the crap out of everybody that they played, beating Auburn by 20, beating Hawaii by 30. They really showed that they were a good team. Would have liked to see them in the Rose Bowl against USC, but you can't get everything you want. The Rose Bowl committee is a bunch of idiots, and what are you going to ask? They got a really good junior quarterback in Matt Stafford, strongest arm in the NCAA. You got an all-SEC running back who's going to be early candidate to win the Heisman, and that's No. Marino, and he's outstanding. And I really want to see them do good this year. I mean, I'm a Florida fan, but I like Georgia, and I think that they're the best team in the nation. The number two team is the USC Trojans. And they're not the number two team, but they're a lock to win 11 games this year. And the reason they are is because they're in the most terrible conference in college football, and that is the Pac-10. The Pac-10 are a bunch of very average teams, ranked way too high for my liking every single year. I mean, last year we said Cal was a contender, and they weren't. We said Oregon was a contender, and they weren't. Arizona State was the co-champs last year, and they lost by 20 points to Texas in their bowl game. This isn't a very good conference at all. I mean, if you take USC out of the conference, it's really hard to distinguish between them and some of these mid-major conferences. But USC's got a good defense nonetheless. They got a really good team. They're a top five team. I just don't think they're the best team. And the only reason I have them so high at number two is because they're in a bad conference and won a lot of games. The number three team is the Florida Gators, and I'm a big fan of the Florida Gators. I love the Florida Gators, but I'm very scared because there's no secondary for the Florida Gators. The Florida Gators have perhaps the most explosive offense coming into next year with Tim Tebow, Percy Harvin, Aaron Hernandez, really good sophomore tight end. You got transfers from USC at running back, and this is going to be a really good offensive team. But the problem remains as the defense. I mean, you got solid pass rushers, you got solid linebackers, but the secondary is non-existent, and it's going to be a huge problem for when they play teams with really good quarterbacks, and I'm going to see that get exposed. Florida could go undefeated this year if their defense plays well, but they're not going to play well because they're not very good. So I wouldn't expect to see Florida do better than maybe 10 wins this year. They'll be a very good team this year. I think that they have enough talent to win the national championship. They just won't. The next team on my list, number four, is Missouri Tigers. The Missouri Tigers last year were the number one team at one point, and then they didn't get to play a BCS game, and they responded in grand fashion by killing Arkansas. And this is a team with Chase Daniel and a lot of playmakers coming back. This is a dangerous team in a really tough Big 12 this year. But I really think that they can get it done because this is a team that I liked a lot last year. They beat Kansas last year. And speaking of Kansas, they're my number five team. And Kansas is my number five team because they lost Aqib Talib, their best playmaker. But other than that, everything's coming back. They got an explosive offense. They beat a really good Virginia Tech team in the Orange Bowl. And they have a really good coach. And they played way past what we thought they would play. You know, we were expecting them to fold on the big stage against Missouri and against Virginia Tech. And they played good in both games, and they even won against Virginia Tech. This is a really, really good Kansas team that's, I think, way underrated going into next year. The number six team in the nation is the Ohio State Buckeyes, and I know what you guys are thinking. Oh, yeah, here we go again. The Buckeyes always get killed. But here's the thing. I think the Buckeyes are always the top five team. I just never think they're the best team in the nation. I don't know how many teams would have gone into LSU and beaten LSU in Louisiana. I don't know how many teams would have beaten Florida 2 years ago. So it's hard to say that they weren't very good. Ohio State is like a lot like UCLA basketball. UCLA basketball last couple of years losing in the Final Four every year. That's because UCLA has a top four team. They just don't have the best team. And it's the same thing with Ohio State. They got my favorite to win the Heisman, which is Chris Meany-Wells. He's a really good player. They're playing in a terrible Big Ten conference this year with all of Michigan leaving and with Mendenhall gone from Illinois. I don't see much of a threat to other than USC in the out-of-conference schedule to keep Ohio State from winning 10 games. The number seven team in the nation, I got the Oklahoma Sooners. And the Oklahoma Sooners, a lot of people are expecting me to have them in the top five. But here's the problem. Oklahoma Sooners can't win bowl games to save their lives. They won the national championship, but then, the last couple bowls that I've seen, they lost to a very average West Virginia team. They lost to a mediocre Boise State team. And they got killed by LSU and USC in the last two national championships they played in. And Bob Stoops is getting off easy. Everybody's talking about Jim Tressel, how he can't win a bowl. What about Bob Stoops? Oklahoma last year I thought would be the second or third best team in the nation going into the bowl, and they responded by getting killed by West Virginia. So they've got a really talented team. Don't doubt me. They have the top 5 team. It's just that they're not going to win their bowl, so I have them so low. The number 8 team in the country, it's going to surprise a lot of people, is the Clemson Tigers. I like the Clemson Tigers because they played really, really well against Auburn, and they're a really dangerous team when they can string it together. I mean, they blew it last year against Boston College. They almost blew it against Florida State. This is a team that should have had 10 wins last year that didn't because they're a young team that didn't know how to get it together. But this year they're going to have it together, and they're going to be a really dangerous team in a very, very, very average ACC with a lot of young people coming up. I mean, Clemson, really, this is your year to take advantage of the ACC because Florida State's on the rise again. Miami's not always going to be as bad, but I mean, due to the fact that the ACC is not very good, Clemson has an opportunity to win 10, 11 games this year. And the number 9 team I have in the country is the Alabama Crimson Tide. And the reason I have the Crimson Tide so high is because they have a great coach and they have a lot of talent and they have crazy fans that are going to make sure that they win. Alabama a couple years ago won 10 games, and ever since then they've kind of thought they were better than they are, and they haven't played to their potential. They lost at home to UL Monroe last year, and they should have beaten LSU. And John Parker Wilson's going into this year with 3 years of SEC quarterback starting experience, which is pretty much invaluable. You can't really trade anything for that. And he's going to play really well and throw the Tide, and I think the Tide are going to surprise a lot of people this year. They're not going to settle for the 6-7, 7-6 seasons anymore. They're going to pull together and win 10 games this year. The number 10 team in the nation, I like the Texas Longhorns, and I like the Texas Longhorns because they killed Arizona State last year, and there's no way that Colt McCoy is the quarterback we saw last year. He's more of the quarterback we saw freshman year. For some reason, he struggled. His offensive line wasn't very good. But at the end of the year, they got it together. I know that they're losing, their running back, but other than that, they have a really, really, really good team. There's no reason they can't win. Colt McCoy is a really good quarterback, and I have a lot of faith in him. I think he's really good. And I have Texas edging out LSU because LSU, although they're the defending national champs, the playmaker they would have had in Ryan Perrilloux isn't playing because of off-the-field issues. And before I go, I'd like to talk about one game, and that game is the Ohio State-USC game. Now, every single year, I hear how good USC is, and I hear how bad Ohio State's opponents are. And for some reason, nobody talks about how bad USC's opponents are. I mean, this is a USC team. The best team that they played out of conference was 3 years ago was Notre Dame, and they pretty much cheated to beat them. And the same Notre Dame team got killed by Ohio State. So I'm not buying that Ohio State plays worse opponents than anybody else. I think USC gets off easy. I mean, USC doesn't ever go on the road to a hostile environment. Maybe against Oregon, that's about it. Well, Ohio State goes on the road against Penn State and Michigan, really tough crowds. And I don't think it's fair the route that they've gone. I think USC is very similar to Ohio State in this fashion. And I'm really interested to see how it plays out. I think Ohio State's going to win that game. And I'm really looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to this season. I'm looking forward to more BCS controversy. I love college football. I mean, it's really, really, it's the best sport we have in America, other than tennis maybe. And that's pretty much it. So I'm Ernie Stone. Comment me if you disagree. I hope you do. All right.